I'm not justifying for why my son was in the gang. I'm not at all. But I know who he was. I think that when we watch the news, we're so quick to label people and, oh, it's just another gang member dead. But we forget that behind these gang members are families. If my son's story could save another child or even help another parent who's grieving, it was important for me to tell this story. I was married to their father, and we had 3 children. Unfortunately, their father got addicted to drugs and alcohol at a pretty young age, and we got divorced when he was little, when my son was little, when all 3 of my kids were little, actually. And then I remarried, and it was a great relationship for a long time, for almost 9 years. We got divorced at the time. I was saved, into church heavily. I was doing security for a church in Durham, North Carolina. And while I was going through my divorce and doing security, there was a pastor that came to the church. And his name was Andre Thorpe. And he said he had a mime camp or mime ministry where they praise dance. And he asked me if it'd be okay if my son joined. He said it was a lot of single moms whose children were part of the camp. And so I agreed. It was a massive group of young people. They traveled. They opened up for a lot of people like Fantasia and Shirley Caesar. And my son loved God. I mean, he truly did. I noticed the pastor became a little too obsessed with my son. When he would ask me, can my son join him on different events, and I would tell him, no, not tonight, or we got something going on, he would get upset. The weekend before I moved here, I spoke to the pastor and told him, we weren't members of his church. Like I said, my son was just part of his mind ministry. And so I spoke to him and I told him we were moving and I was pulling my son out of his program. And he really got mad. Well, why can't you just let him stay with me? And I was like, no, you're not his father. I thank you for all you've done to help me with him, but no. And he literally started crying. And then I knew something was definitely, I still didn't think it was a molestation, but I thought that maybe the pastor was off. We moved here in December of 2014. And then in March, my son started acting out really bad. Like, it was always something. He was in the 9th grade. He was always fighting, arguing at home, very rebellious. And at first I thought maybe it's the teenage years. And I kept asking him, what is wrong? And he kept saying, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And then I was thinking, like, maybe we just need to spend time together. Let's go to some museums. Let's hang out tomorrow. Let's figure out what is going on. And he was like, I don't want to do that. And so he went in his room. I went in my room to call my sister that lives in North Carolina. And when I went to call her, my youngest daughter, she came in the room and told me he was gone. And I said, what do you mean he's gone? And she said he put on a backpack and he said, I love you. And he walked out the door. Immediately, I wondered, did Andre have anything to do with it because of how he just vanished? I went to Andre's page and it was the typical stuff he normally posts about church performances or him singing. It was typical stuff. But then about 2 days later, he had no page. My son had no Facebook, no Instagram. And then it dawned on me, yeah, he got my son. When they took down Andre, the reporters were there to interview me afterwards. So then my son was like, oh my God, you're on TV. Everybody know you're my mom. Everybody knew it was him, that he was the one that was molested. He was the one that was trafficked. He was the one who was from this pastor. He started hanging around a lot of Bloods. He was so adamant to prove that he was a gang member because he wanted to prove he was hard. One day he came home, he had the 2 R's tattooed on his face. The red and black double R's for the Bloods. And I knew then, yep, he's serious. This is real. I think he joined it to prove he wasn't gay or punk or whatever you want to call it. He wanted to call it. But I think now it became, this is real. He started dating someone, a girl his age, and she got pregnant. He ended up having a little girl, beautiful little girl. Her name is Bella. When my son had her, he started realizing, I gotta change. Thanksgiving came around, my son came to the house. He was sitting on the edge of the bed and he just kept just rubbing his head, just doing like this. I kept saying, what's wrong? And he was like, I need to talk to you. And I said, what? And he was like, Mama, I don't want to be a gang member no more. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I'm done. He was like, he just started crying. And he started telling me how he's let me down all these years. And he was like, I know we can't help what happened to me, Ma. He was like, but I could help all the stuff I've done. And he was like, I love you, Ma. I don't want to do this. He said, I promise you, next year, I'm going to make you so proud of me. He was like, you're going to have the best son you ever had. I promise. And Jesus. He just kept crying and crying and crying. And we literally sat on the bed probably for 10 minutes crying. And I apologize. I apologize for not protecting him. Because I felt like I could have protected him better. He left that night. Then that Saturday morning, I didn't talk to him that Friday. That Saturday morning, he called me. Him and his girlfriend was at a hotel, and he wanted an Uber. I called the Uber for him. He sent me a long message about he was serious about the conversation, that he loved me, and I texted him back and I said, I love you too, PJ. And that was the last text. I want my son to be remembered as someone who was loving, someone's life who changed because it wasn't his fault. It wasn't. His childhood, his innocence was literally ripped from him. And it created a different life for him. I'm not taking away from the fact my son's a gang member. That's the life he chose. But it was not because he just woke up one day and said, I want to be a gang member. It was based upon just a pattern of things that had happened, and he wanted out of that life. And his life was taken too soon, too short. Literally days after he made up his mind that he no longer wanted to do that he wanted out. And for me, telling his story, even all the way back from Andre, it's kind of a warning to parents to listen to your child, to pay more attention to if you see the signs, whether it's in gang, kidnapping, trafficking, anything to be more aware. Said, my child will never get kidnapped. My child will never get trafficked. My child will never get in a gang. My child will never be murdered. And I have experienced every last one of those things.